Lena had always believed that quiet moments carried their own kind of magic. Every morning, she reached the small community library before anyone else arrived. She enjoyed those first few minutes when she could walk through the soft light coming in from the tall windows and feel the peaceful air settle around her like a gentle hug. She would place her bag behind the counter, switch on the small lamps, and breathe in the familiar smell of books sold, new, borrowed, loved. To her, the library wasn't just a workplace. It felt like a second home. It was a rainy day when everything in her life began to shift. The sky had turned gray early in the morning, and a steady drizzle had been falling for hours. Rain usually brought fewer visitors, but it also brought a calming sound that made the library feel even more comforting. Lena had just finished fixing a leaning stack of novels on the return shelf when she heard the front door swing open loudly. Pushed by the wind, she looked up, startled. A man stepped inside, soaked from head to toe. Water dripped from his hair, his jacket, even his shoes. He paused near the entrance, not wanting to leave a mess on the floor, and gave an embarrassed half-smile in Lena's direction. She could tell he wasn't used to coming to the library. She could also tell he wasn't having a good day. "Sorry," he said quietly. "The rain got me." His voice was warm but tired, as if he had been running around all morning. "It's all right," Lena replied with a small smile. "Come in, you can stay until the rain slows down." She walked over to the counter and pulled out a clean towel they kept for unexpected spills. "Here, you can dry off a little." He hesitated at first, but then accepted it. "Thank you. This is a lifesaver." Lena nodded and returned to her work, but she noticed him glancing around, unsure of where to go or what to do. He had a gentle face, with eyes that looked like they carried many stories, but she could also sense a kind of loneliness there. She recognized that feeling. She had seen it often in people who wandered into the library for reasons other than books. After drying his hair and face, he slowly walked between the shelves, pretending to look at the titles. His movements were unsure, like someone stepping into unfamiliar territory. Lena watched from the corner of her eye, curious. She wondered what brought him there, because it didn't seem like he had planned to visit a library that morning. A few minutes passed before he finally approached the counter. He held a book, but it was obvious he had picked it randomly. "Is this any good?" he asked. Lena looked at the cover and tried not to laugh. "Well, that's a book about local farming history. Are you interested in farming?" His cheeks flushed slightly. "Not really. I just picked something up so I wouldn't look lost." Lena's smile softened. "You don't have to pretend. It's okay to just sit and wait for the rain to stop." He let out a small laugh, relieved. "Thank you. I guess I needed to hear that." There was something natural about the way he spoke, polite, thoughtful, maybe even a little shy. Lena could sense he wasn't the kind of person who usually opened up to strangers. But there he was, standing in front of her. Sharing a piece of his awkward morning, he found a seat near the window, where the sound of the rain tapping the glass made everything feel softer. Lena went back to sorting books, but her eyes kept drifting toward him. He wasn't reading. He wasn't on his phone. He was just sitting quietly, staring outside, lost in thought. She wondered what he was thinking about. People often came to the library with worries. Some hid them better than others. After a little while, he stood up again and approached her desk. "I hope I'm not bothering you," he began, "but do you mind if I ask something?" "Go ahead," Lena said. "Do you know any good places around here to get a small lunch?" "I'm new to this area and haven't learned much yet." Lena thought for a moment. "There's a bakery across the street. They make fresh soup every day. And if you walk a little farther, there's a small cafe run by an older couple. It's quiet and nice." He nodded slowly, absorbing the information. "Thank you. I should check them out." Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "I moved here last week for a job. Still trying to get used to everything." Lena smiled with understanding. "Moving to a new place isn't easy. It takes time. But you'll settle in. I hope so," he said. "Right now, everything feels strange." He didn't express it directly, but Lena sensed he felt out of place in more ways than one. His shoulders carried a tiredness that didn't come from the rain. They spoke a little more light. Simple conversation. nothing too deep. But the connection between them felt natural. It didn't feel forced or awkward. It felt like two people who were meant to cross paths even if neither of them realized it yet. At one point, Lena noticed he kept glancing at the shelves of storybooks. She walked over, picked up a novel, and handed it to him. "This one is better than the farming book," she said with a grin. He laughed softly and accepted it. "I'll trust your taste." He sat down again and opened the book. But his eyes occasionally drifted toward Lena, as if he was still trying to understand why her presence felt calming. Lena tried to look busy, but she also found herself feeling unusually aware of him. She didn't know him. She didn't know where he came from, what his life was like, or why the sadness in his eyes felt so familiar. But she felt something shift inside her, something gentle, something she couldn't quite name. The rain continued for nearly an hour, and the library remained quiet except for the soft sound of pages turning. When the rain finally slowed, the man stood up, closed the book, and walked back to the counter. "I should get going before it starts again," he said. "Thank you for letting me stay." "You're welcome," Lena replied. "You can come by any time." She said it casually, but she meant it. He gave her a warm smile, the kind that reached his eyes. "I think I will." When he stepped outside, Lena watched him disappear down the street. His jacket still damp, but his steps lighter than when he arrived. She didn't know why she felt a strange sense of loss watching him walk away. She barely knew him. It was just a random rainy day encounter. But the way he had looked at her with a quiet gratitude. The unspoken heaviness lingered in her mind long after he left. The rest of the day passed slowly. A few regular visitors came in, some children dropped by after school, and a couple sat in the corner reading together. Lena went through her usual tasks. But her thoughts kept drifting back to the man with the soaked jacket and tired eyes. She wondered if he found the cafe. She wondered if he liked the soup. She wondered what kind of job he had come for, and whether the weight on his face had anything to do with it. As she wiped the front desk at closing time, she felt an odd warmth in her chest. Something told her this wasn't the last time she would see him. Sometimes. The most meaningful stories began in the simplest ways, with a rainy morning, a borrowed towel, and two strangers who didn't yet know how much their lives were about to change. And Lena, without realizing it, had taken her first quiet step into a chapter she would never forget. Lena arrived at the library. The next morning, with the same calm routine she followed every day, but something inside her felt slightly different. She wouldn't have called it excitement, and she wouldn't have called it curiosity either. It was more like a quiet awareness that stayed with her ever since the man from yesterday stepped out into the rain and disappeared down the street. She didn't even know his name, yet his presence still lingered in her thoughts as if he had left a soft echo behind. The morning started slow. A few regular visitors trickled in, mostly older people who came to read newspapers or sit by the window for company. Lena kept herself busy with organizing donations, dusting the top shelves, and returning books to their sections. But every time the door opened, her heart gave a tiny jump before she forced herself to act normal by noon. The rain from the day before had cleared completely. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting warm patterns across the tabletops. Everything should have felt ordinary. But it didn't. Not entirely. She was restocking a row of novels when she heard footsteps she didn't recognize steady. Careful steps that paused as if the person wasn't sure where to go. She turned, and there he was. The same man. The same gentle eyes, but today he looked a little less tired. He gave her a shy smile. "Hi again. I hope it's okay that I'm here." Lena felt an unexpected wave of warmth. Of course. Anyone can come in. "Good," he said, rubbing the back of his neck lightly. "I wasn't sure if you'd remember me." She tried not to smile too much. "You didn't give me much to forget." He laughed softly, the kind of laugh that sounded new, like he hadn't used it in a while. He walked toward the reading section, holding a folded paper bag that looked like it came from the bakery across the street. "I brought something," he said, placing the bag carefully on the counter. "Yesterday you helped me without even knowing me, so I got you a pastry. I didn't know what you liked, so I asked the lady to pick something simple." Lena blinked, surprised. No one ever brought her anything. It wasn't something she expected from visitors. "That's very thoughtful," she said. Thank you, he nodded, looking almost relieved. I wasn't sure if it was weird. I just wanted to show I appreciated your kindness. It's not weird, Lena replied softly. It's nice. He let out a small breath and glanced around. I thought maybe I'd read a bit today. Or at least pretend to read better than yesterday. Lena smiled. You don't have to pretend, but I can help you find something you'll actually enjoy this time. He followed her to the shelves like a student following a calm teacher. She showed him books with simple storytelling, warm themes, and gentle pacing. He listened carefully, not interrupting her once. But she could tell when something caught his interest by the slight lift in his eyes, when she handed him a novel about everyday life full of heart. Small struggles and meaningful moments. He paused and held it longer than the others. This one feels right, said. Lena nodded. It's a good choice. He carried the book to the table near the window, the same place he sat the day before. But today, instead of quietly staring outside, he actually opened the book. As he read, Lena went about her tasks. But this time, she didn't watch him from the corner of her eye. She simply felt his presence. It felt easy. Natural. About 30 minutes passed before he returned to her desk. This book. He began holding it against his chest. It feels like someone wrote it for people who are trying to find their place. Lena looked up. Does it make you feel understood? He exhaled slowly. Yes, more than I expected. He hesitated a moment before leaning on the counter slightly. I haven't really had anyone to talk to since I moved here. Everything's been strange and honestly lonely. Yesterday, I didn't just come in because of the rain. I just needed somewhere to sit where I didn't feel overwhelmed. Lena's heart softened. She understood that feeling more than he realized. This place is good for that, she said. A lot of people come here when they don't know where else to go. Wait. It already feels like the only peaceful place I've found so far. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence didn't feel awkward, just gentle. Finally, he straightened up. Sorry, I didn't mean to dump my feelings on you. I don't usually talk this much. It's okay, Lena said. You can talk if you want to. He smiled at her, a soft, grateful smile that made his face look brighter. Then he returned to his seat. As the afternoon passed, he stayed longer than most visitors. He read slowly, sometimes pausing to think, sometimes looking around as if absorbing the calm atmosphere. Lena continued working, but she noticed something. Whenever someone spoke loudly or pushed a chair too hard, his shoulders tensed just a little, like he wasn't used to unexpected noise. She wondered about his life, what he had left behind, what he was carrying with him, what he was hoping to find. Later, when the sun began to shift, he closed the book and walked toward her again. I should go, he said. I don't want to overstay. You're not overstaying, Lena replied. He looked down, touched by her sincerity. Thank you. For everything, really. You can come back whenever you like, she added. He paused, then nodded. I think I will. He walked out calmly this time, not weighed down by rain or worry. And Lena watched him go with the same strange feeling she felt yesterday. Quiet warmth she couldn't explain. The next day, he returned again, and the day after. At first, Lena thought maybe he just enjoyed reading, but soon it became clear that he enjoyed talking to her even more. He told her bits about his new job, how it wasn't what he expected, how he was still trying to fit in, how he was worried about disappointing the people who believed in him. He wasn't dramatic about it, just honest. Lena listened, offering small pieces of comfort. She never tried to fix his problems, just shared the silence and the space with him. In return, he asked her about her life, not in a pushy way, but with quiet curiosity. She told him about growing up in the town, about how she started working at the library at a young age, about how she loved stories because they made even small lives feel meaningful. You make things sound gentle, he told her one afternoon. Maybe that's because I like seeing the gentle parts of life, she replied. He thought about that, then said, maybe I need more of that. Their conversations were simple, nothing dramatic, nothing heavy. Yet each talk left a warm feeling in the air, as if a new thread was slowly weaving between them. One day, He arrived with a small paper notebook. I started writing things I notice, he told her. Just small things, like moments that feel meaningful. I think you've inspired that somehow. Lena looked at him with surprise. Me, yes, he said, giving a shy smile. You make normal moments feel softer. You notice things most people ignore. She didn't know what to say to that. She wasn't used to being seen that way. They sat together by the window for a bit, not talking much. Sunlight danced across the table, and people around them moved quietly. It was one of those moments where everything felt slow and peaceful. At one point, he read aloud a small line from his notebook. Some people enter your life quietly, like a warm morning after a long, cold night. He closed the notebook quickly. Almost embarrassed, Lena felt her chest tighten with a soft emotion she couldn't name. That's beautiful. He looked at her briefly before turning away. I didn't write it for anyone. I just wrote what I felt. But Lena wondered if he had written it because of what he felt around her. Days passed, and their connection grew stronger not with grand gestures, but through small, consistent pieces of real life. He helped her organize shelves sometimes. She recommended books she secretly hoped he'd like. They shared conversations where pauses felt as meaningful as words. Other visitors started noticing too. An older woman once whispered to Lena, "That young man looks at you like you're a safe place." Lena smiled awkwardly but didn't deny it, because she had seen that look, the gentle way he relaxed around her, as if her presence gave him a moment of rest. One afternoon he didn't show up. Lena tried not to worry, but her thoughts kept drifting toward him. Was he okay? Was he sick? Did something happen at his job? The next day, he still didn't come. Lena felt a quiet disappointment settle in her chest, but on the third day, he walked into the library with a slightly nervous expression. "Sorry I've been away," he said. "Work got a bit rough." Lena felt her heart ease. "You don't have to apologize," he nodded but looked down. "I just didn't want you to think I disappeared," she gently replied. "I didn't think that." He looked up at her then, really looked, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them, something gentle, fragile but real. The rest of the afternoon, they talked more openly than before. He shared his fears about being good enough at his job. She told him about the pressure of always being the responsible one in her family. They laughed over small misunderstandings and sat in comfortable silences. By closing time, when he stood to leave, he hesitated. "I'm glad I came here that rainy day," he said softly. Lena felt her breath catch. "I'm glad too." He walked out into the cool evening, and Lena locked up the library with a heart that felt lighter than it had in a long time. Some connections didn't need drama or intensity. They grew in the quiet moments, in the gentle spaces between words, in the silent understanding that two people were slowly becoming important to each other, and Lena knew deep in her heart that something was changing. Not fast, not loud, but beautifully. Lena woke up the next morning with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in a long while. She couldn't explain it, but the steady growing bond between her and the man who visited the library had become part of her days in a quiet, comforting way. She didn't look for drama, and she didn't imagine anything too big. But she did enjoy his company, the warmth in his voice, and the peaceful way he looked at the world when he let his guard down. But life had its own rhythm, and not every day was soft or predictable. The third week after their first meeting brought a change neither of them expected. It began early one morning when the man walked into the library with a worried expression. His shoulders looked tense, his eyes dimmer than usual, and his steps lacked their recent steadiness. Lena noticed it the second he walked through the door. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice gentle. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm not sure." He placed a folded letter on the counter. Lena didn't read it, of course, but she could see the company logo on the top corner and the thin, official tone in the text. "Is it about work?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "They're cutting positions. My name is on the list they're considering." Lena felt a small sting in her heart. She had seen how hard he'd been trying to adjust, how much pressure he carried, how much he wanted to do well. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "That must feel heavy." He let out a slow breath and leaned against the counter. I thought I finally had a chance to settle. I moved here because I believed this job would give me a fresh start. And now, I don't know what's going to happen. Lena listened quietly, not wanting to interrupt his thoughts. He continued, "It's not even confirmed yet. But waiting for news like this, it eats at you." She nodded. "Uncertainty is its own kind of stress." He looked up at her, and for a brief moment, she saw a depth of tiredness he had been holding back for days. "I didn't want to bring this here," he said. "This place feels peaceful, and I didn't want to ruin it." "You're not ruining anything," Lena replied softly. "You're allowed to feel what you feel." He held her gaze for a moment before looking away, as if scared he'd reveal too much. They talked for a few minutes, but his posture stayed tense. He didn't sit by the window like he usually did. Instead, he paced slowly around the shelves, picking up books and placing them back without really looking at them. Lena pretended to focus on her tasks, but her eyes followed him whenever he wasn't looking. After a while, he returned to the counter. "I think I should go. My mind's not in the right place today. I'll just distract people here." "You're not a distraction," she said. He offered a faint smile, but didn't argue. "Thank you for saying that." As he walked out, Lena felt a heaviness settle in her chest. She had gotten used to his presence more than she realized. Seeing him that troubled made her realize how much she wanted him to be okay. The next day, he didn't come, and the day after that. The library felt too quiet. Lena tried to distract herself with extra work cleaning shelves, adjusting displays, helping visitors, but every time the door opened, she found herself hoping it was him. On the fourth day, she finally saw him walking toward the entrance, but something about him looked different. His steps dragged a little. He seemed lost in thought. He entered without looking around and went straight to the table by the window. Lena waited a minute before approaching him, giving him space. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. He looked up slowly, as if pulling himself back from faraway thoughts. "They let me go," he said. The simple, quiet way he said it made her heart sink. No anger, no frustration, just a soft exhaustion that felt deeper than anything he had expressed before. "I'm really sorry," Lena said. "I know how much you were trying." He gave a small nod. "It's strange. I thought I'd feel angry, but mostly I feel empty, like I'm suddenly unsure where I belong." Lena pulled out the chair beside him and sat down. It was the first time she had done that since they met. "You do belong," she said in a gentle voice. "You're not lost. You're just going through something hard." He stared at the table for a long moment. "I moved here thinking this would be a new chapter, and now I've already failed." "You haven't failed," she said softly. "Life doesn't break because one thing goes wrong. Sometimes it pushes you toward something better." He looked at her, then really looked. His eyes were glossy, not with tears, but with the weight of emotions he'd been trying to hide. "You always say things that make hard moments feel lighter," he whispered. "I don't know how you do that." Lena's voice was soft, warm. "Because sometimes we all need someone to remind us we'll be okay," he smiled faintly. It wasn't a happy smile, but it held gratitude. For a while they sat quietly together, listening to the soft hum of the library around them. After some minutes, he whispered, "The past few days were really hard, but I kept thinking about coming here. I didn't because I felt embarrassed." "Embarrassed?" Lena asked gently. He nodded. "I didn't want you to see me like this, lost, unsure, and without a plan. I didn't want you to think I was weak." Lena felt her heart tighten. "Everyone feels weak sometimes. That doesn't make you less. It makes you human." He breathed out slowly, as if her words eased something inside him. "You make it sound so simple," he said. "Sometimes simple is the truth," she replied. He leaned back in the chair and closed his eyes for a moment, letting the calm settle around him. When he finally opened them, he said something that surprised her. "Do you ever feel like life keeps asking you to start over before you're ready?" Lena nodded. "More times than I can count." He smiled slightly. "I guess we're not that different then?" The rest of the afternoon passed slowly. He stayed longer than usual. He didn't read much. He didn't talk much, but the quiet presence they shared felt meaningful. At closing time, He stood up and helped her put away some chairs without being asked. "Thank you for listening today," he said softly. "You can talk to me any time," Lena replied. He hesitated, then added in a low voice, "You don't know how much that means." He left with slow steps. But this time, he looked back before walking out the door. Their eyes met for just a moment, and Lena felt something shift, subtle but real. The following week was unpredictable. Some days he came in and seemed almost normal, reading calmly and even smiling at small things she said. Other days he arrived looking tired and distant, carrying the weight of uncertainty. But even on the heavier days, he still came, and Lena remained the quiet space he returned to. One afternoon, as he sat by the window staring out at the cloudy sky, he asked softly, "Do you think things happen for a reason?" "Sometimes," Lena answered. "And sometimes I think we give things meaning afterward, when we look back." He nodded slowly. "Maybe losing this job will make sense someday." "It will," she said. "Even if right now it just feels painful." He glanced at her, his voice barely above a whisper. "You always make me feel like I'm not completely falling apart," she smiled gently. "You're not. You're dealing with a hard moment. That's all." He looked down, and for the first time, Lena noticed the hint of uncertainty in his hands, like he wanted to reach for something familiar, but didn't know how. Life outside the library kept pressing on him. Bills, job, hunting, doubts, fear of the future. One day, he came in later than usual, and Lena could immediately see something was wrong. He sat heavily in the nearest chair, rubbing his eyes. "Rough day?" she asked. "The roughest," he whispered. "I had 3 interviews. All of them said they'd get back to me, which probably means they won't." Lena walked to his table and placed a cup of warm tea in front of him. She hadn't planned to, but something in her heart pushed her to offer comfort. He looked up at her with surprise. "You didn't have to." "I know," she said softly, "but you needed it." He cupped the warm mug between his hands, holding it as if it were the only steady thing in his day. "You're a good person, Lena," he said, his voice quiet but full of sincerity. "I don't think I've met someone like you before." His words warmed her in a way she wasn't prepared for. She sat down across from him. "You're a good person too," she said. "You just don't see it right now." He stared at the mug, then whispered, "I'm scared of failing again." "You won't," she said gently. "Not forever. Not always." He looked at her with an expression that held both gratitude and vulnerability. In that moment, something unspoken between them deepened. As the days passed, he kept coming, sometimes sad, sometimes hopeful, sometimes somewhere in between. Lena learned the way his expressions changed, the way his voice softened when he felt safe, the way he sat a little straighter whenever she encouraged him. Little by little, he started smiling more. One afternoon, he arrived with a small notebook, his journal, and placed it on the table. "Can I read you something?" he asked softly. Lena nodded. He opened the notebook to a page filled with careful handwriting. He took a breath and read, "Some days feel like heavy rain. But even on those days, there are places that feel warm. And sometimes that warmth comes from someone you least expected." He closed the notebook slowly. Lena's chest tightened with emotion. "That's beautiful," he held her gaze. "I wrote it because of you." She felt her breath catch before she could respond. He stood slowly, almost unsure, and whispered, "Thank you for being someone I can come back to." Lena couldn't find the right words to answer, but the warmth in her eyes told him everything. There, connection had grown beyond small conversations. In shared silence, it had become something deeper, not perfect, not easy, but real, and in that quiet library. During those uncertain days, their hearts took another step toward each other softly, naturally, and without either of them realizing how important this bond was becoming. Lena had been trying to focus on her work all week, but her heart had been carrying a quiet weight. Ever since Arif began pulling away, she tried to convince herself that maybe he just needed space. Maybe he was busy. Maybe she was overthinking things. But no matter how many excuses she tried to create, she could feel the truth beneath everything. Something was bothering him deeply. She saw it in the way he avoided meeting her eyes. The way he suddenly kept his visits short, the way he tried to smile, but the smile never reached his eyes. Lena wasn't someone who demanded answers quickly. She wasn't the type to chase someone who was stepping back. But she did care, and that caring made her notice every small shift. On the other side, Arif had been carrying his own storm quietly. After receiving news that his job might be at risk, he had been caught between fear and responsibility. He had always been the one who needed to stay strong, especially for his sister. He had never allowed himself to appear weak or lost. But now, everything inside him felt uncertain. He had wanted to tell Lena. But every time he looked at her warm smile, something inside him tightened. He didn't want her to worry. He didn't want her to think he was someone who couldn't handle his life. And most of all, the thought began growing in his mind. Maybe he wasn't stable enough to let his feelings for her go any further, so he chose to stay away. Not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much. But what he didn't know was that his silence was hurting her in ways she had no words for. One rainy evening, after a long, quiet week, Lena found herself sitting alone behind the library desk, sorting some returned books. The rain tapping on the windows made the room feel softer, but also heavier. She glanced at the entrance a few times, not expecting him to come, but still hoping. And then the door opened. Arif walked in, his shoulders slightly hunched, his clothes damp from the drizzle outside. He didn't look like he had come to borrow a book. He looked like someone who had been searching for courage for days. Lena's heart gave a small jump, but she stayed calm, pretending to be busy until he slowly approached the desk. "Hi," he said softly. It wasn't like his usual greeting. This one sounded like it had traveled through worry before reaching her. "Hi," Lena replied, her voice gentle. There was a pause. Arif lowered his eyes. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. Lena nodded. Of course. They walked to the reading corner, the same place where they had shared stories, laughed about random things, and discovered how much they enjoyed each other's company. But today, the air between them felt different. Arif sat down slowly. He rubbed his palms together, trying to find the right words. His eyes looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from carrying too much alone. "I know you noticed," he finally said. "Me avoiding you, not being myself. I'm sorry." Lena didn't interrupt. She waited. Arif took a breath. Something happened at work. They might cut a few positions. Mine could be one of them. I didn't know how to tell you. Because I didn't know how to deal with it myself. His voice trembled slightly. It was the first time Lena had seen him look so unsure. "I felt embarrassed," he admitted. "I felt like I wasn't good enough to be around you. Like I shouldn't let anything grow between us when I'm not even sure about my future. So I stepped back." Lena listened quietly. Every word came from a place of fear, but also honesty. After a moment, she leaned forward slightly. "Arif," she said softly, "you don't have to be perfect around me. You don't have to always be strong. Sometimes life becomes heavy. That's normal. But pushing people away doesn't make the weight easier. It makes it lonelier." Arif looked at her, and for the first time in days, his eyes softened. "I thought you'd worry," he whispered. "Of course I would," she replied with a small smile. "Caring means worrying. But I'd rather worry with you than watch you struggle alone without saying anything." Silence filled the space, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a silence that allowed his heart to breathe. Arif exhaled slowly, as if the tension he had been carrying finally loosened. "I didn't want to be a burden," he said honestly. "You're not," Lena replied. "Everyone goes through hard moments. But people who care, stay. They don't leave when things get difficult." Arif lowered his head, feeling a mixture of relief and regret. "I should have talked to you." "It's okay," she said. "You're talking now?" He looked at her again, and something warm passed between them, something deeper than their earlier gentle conversations, something more real than their laughter-filled afternoons. It was a connection that came from honesty, from vulnerability, from the courage to be seen with all their fears. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain outside created a soft background sound, making the library feel even more peaceful. "Lena," he said quietly, "I didn't realize how much your presence meant to me until I pulled away. Everything felt emptier. I felt emptier." Her eyes softened. "I missed you too." Those simple words settled deep in his heart. After that, they talked for a long time. Arif told her everything. The stress, the doubt, the fear of losing the one piece of stability he had just found in his life. Lena listened carefully and comforted him with words that came from a place of care. Not pity. She reminded him that his value didn't depend on a job title. She reminded him that setbacks didn't define a person's worth. She reminded him that he didn't have to handle everything alone, bit by bit. Arif felt the heaviness inside him lighten. Hours passed without either of them noticing. The library lights grew softer as closing time approached. But neither of them rushed to leave. It wasn't a grand confession or dramatic moment. It was something more meaningful to people finally seeing each other clearly. When it was time to go, Arif stood up slowly. "Thank you for listening," he said. "I didn't realize how much I needed this." "Any time," Lena replied. As they walked toward the exit, Arif stopped for a moment. He looked at her with a quiet sincerity that made her heart feel warm. "Lena," he said softly, "I'm really glad I met you." She felt her cheeks warm slightly, but she smiled. "I'm glad too." He stepped outside into the cool evening air, but this time he didn't walk away with a heavy heart. He walked away with hope. Lena watched through the door for a moment before closing it. Something had changed between them, not loud or flashy, but deep and gentle. They were no longer just two people who met by chance. They were two hearts slowly learning to trust, to share, and to stay. And this moment, simple but powerful, was just the beginning of something beautiful. The days that followed their long conversation in the library felt different for both Lena and Arif. Something had shifted quietly.
More gently but deeply.
It was as if the distance that had existed between them for weeks had melted away, placed by a calm closeness neither of them had to force. Arif woke up the next morning with a clearer mind. He wasn't free from problems, but he wasn't drowning in them anymore. There was a lightness inside him that he hadn't felt in a long time. Feeling he realized came from having someone who understood him without judgment. He kept thinking about Lena's words about how caring meant worrying, about not needing to be perfect, about staying even during hard times. Those words kept replaying in his mind like a soft echo. Meanwhile, Lena spent her morning preparing the library for the day. She arranged the books, wiped the tables, and opened the curtains to let in the soft sunlight. Everything felt a little warmer, a little brighter. She found herself smiling at small things, remembering how Arif had looked when he finally opened up to her. There was something sincere and gentle about him, something that made her feel safe in a way she hadn't expected. But even with the warmth around them, both knew the story wasn't finished yet. Life had a way of testing people, and this time was no different. One afternoon, 3 days after their conversation, Arif walked into the library again. But this time, he didn't come with the weight of fear or doubt. He came with a quiet hope. Lena was placing books on a shelf when she noticed him standing at the entrance. When their eyes met, both of them shared a soft smile, one that carried more meaning than they could express in words. "You're early today," she said, walking toward him. "I guess I wanted to see you," he replied honestly. That simple sentence warmed her heart. They sat in their usual corner, and Arif gently placed a small envelope on the table. "I got a message from the company," he said. Lena's heart paused for a moment. What did they say? He opened the envelope and took out a printed letter. "They kept my position, but they also offered a chance to shift to a more permanent role." His voice carried surprise, relief, and gratitude all at once. Lena's eyes widened. "That's wonderful." Arif nodded slowly, still processing the news himself. "It feels unreal. I was preparing for the worst, but now I have a chance to build something stable." "You deserve it," she said softly. He looked at her with appreciation. "I don't know if I would have handled the uncertainty without your support. You gave me courage when I had none left. Lena felt her chest tighten in a warm way. You're stronger than you think, Arif. You just needed someone to remind you. They talked for almost an hour about his plans, his hopes, and the small steps he wanted to take now that things were improving. Lena listened with genuine interest, happy to see the glow in his eyes return. Before leaving, Arif paused at the doorway. Will you join me for tea tomorrow? He asked, not hiding the nervousness in his voice. Lena felt her heart flutter lightly. Yes, she said. I'd like that. And just like that, something new began. The next day, they met at a small tea house near the library. It was a peaceful place, with wooden tables, warm lighting, and the smell of fresh chai filling the air. They sat by the window, watching people pass by while talking about everything and nothing. Ref told her stories about his childhood, how he used to race with his sister down the street, how he once tried to fix a broken radio and ended up breaking it even more. Lena laughed at all the right moments, her eyes shining with joy. Lena shared stories too, how she fell in love with books as a child, how she dreamed of studying literature one day, and how she hoped to make her life more meaningful instead of just routine as their cups emptied. Their connection grew stronger with each passing moment. Days turned into weeks, and they fell into a comfortable rhythm. They met often, sometimes at the library, sometimes outside. They walked together, shared snacks, talked about life, and slowly built a bond that felt natural and right. But what made their growing closeness so special was that it didn't rely on big declarations or dramatic moments. It grew from small things, shared smiles, thoughtful gestures, quiet understanding. One evening, after closing the library, Lena stepped outside and found Arif waiting near the gate. The sky was turning pink with the setting sun, and the cool breeze carried the sound of rustling leaves. You didn't have to wait, she said gently. I wanted to walk you home, he replied. They walked side by side, their steps in sync. The streets were peaceful, with families heading home and children laughing in the distance. For a while, neither of them said anything. They didn't need to. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken feelings. Halfway to her home, Arif finally spoke. Lena, you know, when I first came to this city, I felt lost. Everything felt too big, too fast. I didn't think I'd find anything that felt like home. He paused before adding quietly, but then I met you. Lena's breath caught slightly, but she stayed calm. I don't know what the future holds, he continued, but I know that life feels better, safer, and more meaningful with you in it. Lena turned to him slowly. Her eyes were warm, gentle, and full of sincerity. I feel the same way, she said softly. You make my days brighter, and I'm glad you came into my life. He continued walking, but something had changed. It wasn't a confession in the usual sense. It wasn't forced or dramatic. It was simple, honest, and real, something that touched their hearts deeply. Months passed, and their bond only grew stronger. Arif settled into his new role at work, gaining confidence and stability. Lena started taking evening classes in literature. Encouraged by Arif's constant support, they celebrated small achievements together. They comforted each other during stressful days. They shared meals, laughter, and moments that quietly shaped their story. One sunny afternoon, they sat in the park watching children play while birds chirped in the trees. Arif turned to Lena and said, You once told me people stay when they care. Thank you for staying. Lena looked at him, her smile soft and full of affection. You stayed too. We stayed together. Arif reached out and gently held her hand. I want us to keep staying, he said quietly. She squeezed his hand back. So do I. Their story wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about two ordinary people who found comfort in each other's presence, who learned to trust, who held on even when life felt uncertain. It was a love that grew slowly, patiently, beautifully, a love built on understanding, kindness, and the simple courage to show up every single day. A love that felt real, a love that stayed, and it was a story neither of them could ever imagine skipping after many peaceful months of growing closer. Lena and Arif found themselves settling into a rhythm that felt almost like a quiet miracle. Neither of them had planned for their lives to intertwine the way they did, but sometimes life has its own gentle timing. And when moments fall into place naturally, they create a kind of happiness that feels both unexpected and deeply comforting. The days were calmer for both of them now. Arif's new job position had brought him more stability, and he walked into work each day with a sense of gratitude he hadn't felt in years. He no longer carried the fear that used to weigh him down during the early months. Instead, he carried a sense of hope that came from knowing he wasn't alone anymore. Lena, too, was experiencing changes in her life. Her evening literature classes had become something she looked forward to. She loved the way words could create worlds, express emotions, and connect people. Each class made her more confident. Each page she read reminded her of the dreams she had once pushed aside. She hadn't told many people about her dreams, but she told Arif, and he listened in a way that made her feel seen. One thing that had become a steady part of their routine was their weekend walks. Every Saturday afternoon, they would meet near the park and stroll along the long paths lined with trees. Sometimes they talked for hours, and sometimes they simply walked in comfortable silence, listening to the breeze and the distant laughter of children. On one such Saturday, the sky was clear and bright, and the gentle warmth of the sun made everything feel peaceful. Lena reached the park first and sat on a bench, watching families spread out picnic sheets, children chasing bubbles, and elderly couples walking hand in hand. When Arif arrived, he smiled as soon as he saw her. He sat beside her, and for a moment they both just watched the world around them. "It's beautiful today," Lena said softly. "It is," Arif agreed. "But you being here makes it even better." Lena felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she didn't look away. She was getting used to the way he expressed himself gently, sincerely, without trying to impress her, but simply speaking the truth from his heart. They began their walk, following their usual path. After a few minutes, Arif slowed down. "Can I tell you something?" he asked quietly. "Always," Lena replied. He stopped walking and leaned against a tree, taking a slow breath before speaking. "I've been thinking a lot about the future. Not just my future, our future." Lena's heart skipped. She didn't speak, not wanting to interrupt him. "When I first came here," he continued, "I was lost. Then I met you, and everything started changing. You didn't fix my problems, but you helped me face them. You didn't push me, but you believed in me. That belief, it did something to me." Lena's eyes softened as she listened. "I want you in my life," Arif said. "Not just for now, not just while things are easy. I want you to stay even as life keeps changing. I want to walk through everything with you. Good days, bad days, ordinary days." He paused, then added quietly, "I want us to build something together." Lena felt her heart fill with warmth. She had been feeling the same way for weeks, maybe months. But hearing him say it out loud made her eyes mist with emotion. She stepped closer, her voice soft but steady. "Arif, I want that too. I want a future with you. I want us to grow together. I want us to keep choosing each other every day." He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. A slow, relieved smile spread across his face. For a few moments, they simply stood there in the shade of the tree, letting their feelings settle in the soft breeze. From that day on, their bond grew even deeper. They planned small things together like trying new cafes, exploring nearby towns on weekends, and attending local events. They supported each other through busy schedules and stressful days. One evening, after one of Lena's literature classes, Arif picked her up outside the building. She looked tired but content, holding a notebook full of scribbled quotes and ideas. "How was class?" he asked. "Really good," she said, smiling. "We talked about stories and how every character has something they're trying to heal or understand. It made me think about life a little differently." Arif glanced at her. "In what way?" She hugged her notebook closer. "I guess I realized that even people who seem strong have quiet battles. And sometimes, What they really need is someone who understands them. Someone who stays. Arif's expression softened. I'm glad we stayed for each other. Lena looked at him warmly. Me too. They drove to a small cafe afterward, and as they sat across from each other, talking over warm tea and pastries, they felt the simplicity of life in that moment, the kind of simplicity that held real meaning. Weeks passed. Their connection continued to grow. They didn't rush anything. They didn't try to perfect anything. They simply lived, loved, and supported each other in small, steady ways. One day, Lena received unexpected news from her literature instructor. There was an opportunity to participate in a small writing contesta, chance for her to create a short story and share her voice with others. She wasn't sure she was good enough, but when she told Arif, his reaction surprised her. You should definitely do it, he said with excitement. Lena shook her head. But what if I'm not ready? What if my writing isn't strong enough? Arif leaned forward, looking straight into her eyes. Lena, listen to me. You have a gift. I've seen the way you write, the way you feel everything deeply and express it so clearly. Even if you don't win, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you try. His confidence in her made her feel brave. Over the next few days, Lena worked on her story. She sat at her desk late into the night, writing and rewriting. Arif supported her in every way he could, bringing her tea, checking on her, even giving her space when she needed it. One night, while she was struggling with the final paragraph, she felt frustrated and unsure. She sighed heavily, placing her head on the table. Arif walked in quietly and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Hey, he said softly, you're doing great. Don't be hard on yourself. Just write from your heart. That's where your strength is. Lena looked up at him, her eyes tired but grateful. Thank you. For believing in me, even when I don't believe in myself. He smiled. That's what we do for each other, with his reassurance. She finished her story and submitted it the next day. 2 weeks later, she received an email saying her story had been selected for publication in a small community magazine. It wasn't a major award, but to her, it felt huge. She ran to the library to find Arif. He was sitting in their usual corner, reading a newspaper. She stopped in front of him, breathless. Arif, she said, her voice overflowing with excitement. My story got selected. He stood up instantly, his eyes lighting up. Really? She nodded rapidly. Yes. Without thinking, Arif wrapped her in a warm hug. It wasn't planned or measured. It was pure emotion. Lena froze for a second, then relaxed into the moment. When they pulled away, both were smiling. I knew you could do it, he said softly. The happiness in her eyes made Arif feel something new, something deeper than he had ever felt before. He realized then that he didn't just care about Lena, he loved her. That night, as they walked together under the streetlights, Arif gathered his courage. Lena, he began, his voice gentle but steady. I need to tell you something. I've been feeling it for a long time, but today I understood it clearly. I love you. Lena stopped walking. Her eyes widened, not in shock, but in emotion. Arif continued, I love the way you see the world. I love your kindness, your strength, your heart. I love everything about you. And I want you in my life, not just as a friend, but as the person I want to share everything with. He paused. If you feel the same, I want us to take this step together. Tears gathered in Lena's eyes, not from sadness, but from the depth of what she felt.